Hi awesome people! Congratulations on making it this far in this tutorial series. If you've been following along, you'll know that our app can now save new journal entries and retrieve all the entries from our database. But right now, our app is missing the ability to update and delete journal entries. In this video, we'll tackle these two operations and ensure our app has full CRUD functionality. So let's start with the update functionality. First, we need to provide a way to somehow trigger the bottom sheet when the user taps on these three dots of a specific journal cell. Additionally, before displaying the bottom sheet, we'll pre-fill it with the data from the selected journal entry. This ensures the user can see the existing information and make the necessary updates easily. So let's just quickly find out where we declared our journal cell. This should be under main content, under the cells, and this is our custom view. And inside it, we need to implement a callback that activates when the user taps the three dots button. This will allow the action to propagate back to the home view right here, enabling us to control the visibility of this bottom view. So by holding command and click, we should jump into it. Here, let's declare a closure called var on button pressed. Let's find the button. Here we go. When we first created this, we left the comment here. Now, all we have to do is delete this comment and put that closure here on button pressed. Now we're going to have an error on the preview. Just add curly brackets here and everything should work just fine. Now if we go back to our home view, we can add the curly brackets here too. And this is a block of code where we know that the user pressed on that three dots menu. And when that happens, we can do some action here. In our case, we should trigger the bottom sheet visibility and before that pre-fill the data that we need in our bottom sheet. And instead of putting all the logic right here, let's create another private function right below this. So private function show bottom sheet with data for entry, journal entry. And the first thing that we need to do here is populate the data for our bottom sheet. So you're gonna just leave a comment here and come back to it later, a bit later. And the second thing, we need to trigger the visibility of that bottom sheet. So just use our variable and add a toggle after it. Now, if we just press any journal cell right here, we should see the bottom sheet, but nothing happens. That is because we need to call this function right in this callback and pass the entry. And let's try again. There we have it. But as you can see, no data is populated for the journal cell that was clicked on. Now let's try to populate that bottom view in order to let users update their data. So for that, let's create a new function in our view model. Remember, we need our logic to be separated from our view. So we're gonna take advantage of our view model. So let's call this new function fill journal data for this specific entry. Now let's go ahead in our view model and create that function. And here, the first thing we need to do is say self.journalContent equals entry.content. So populate the content first of all, then the rating. So self.rating equals entry.wellbeing rating. And for now, that should be it. Let's go back into our home view and check it out again. So let's press the second one. There we go. We can see that the content is populated and also the rating is 1 out of 5, right? Let's go on 4 out of 5. There we have it. And you can see that we have a bug in our app. Basically, every time we try to view an already existent journal entry because we want to update it, when we dismiss that bottom sheet, it saves it again. And that is something that we have to fix. We have to go back to our home view model. First of all, we need to modify a bit our save flow because right now, every time that bottom sheet is dismissed, either from creating a new journal entry or trying to update an already existing one, this function will be triggered. And when this function is triggered, our repository is going to create a new journal entry every time. And that is not what we want. So what we need to do is first of all, make this function private and then create another one, which is not private, called save or update journal entry. And this function will call the save journal entry based on a condition that we have to find. The condition will decide if either we have to save it or update it, right? So we're going to have another function called update journal entry. Same as save, it's going to be private. And of course, this one needs to be async as well. Wait here for both of them. We should have no errors left. So how do we know if we have to save or update? Well, we know that we have to update a journal entry if this field journal data was already called. And to make our lives easier, let's create another private variable here called private var current selected journal entry of type journal entry, and it's going to be optional. And of course, when you declare an attribute here as var, it's going to be defaulting to nil. So the current value or the default one is going to be nil for this current selected journal entry. But if the user wants to update something to a specific journal cell, we're going to update that value. Self.current selected journal entry equals entry. Now we can take advantage of this new variable right in our save or update journal entry. And the condition is the following. If the current selected journal entry is nil, that means that we have to create a new one. If this is not nil, that means that we have to update an already existing one that we have in our database. And now, in theory, we shouldn't have that bug anymore. So let's check that out. In our home view, we have to modify the naming here, so save or update. And now if we trigger an update and just do nothing for now and just hit dismiss, nothing should happen because we didn't create a new one. We just saw the details of an already existing one. So this is behaving exactly as we want to. And now we can write code in order to make this update operation functional. So let's go back to our home view model and we have this update journal entry. First thing that we have to do is check that if our current selected journal entry is available to us. So let entry equals current selected journal entry and that the journal content is not empty, else return. So the first condition is pretty obvious. If this is nil, we don't have anything to update. But the second one is just for extra measure because in theory, we shouldn't have a journal entry in our database that its journal content is empty. Because if we check this function, we already have a guard here. So it will never save a journal entry if its content is empty. Now we need another set of conditions. We need to make sure that this current selected journal entry that the user pressed on has its values inside it different from the one that were populated initially. So how we do that? Just type guard entry.content is different than the journal content that we populated when the bottom sheet was triggered, or entry.wellbeing rating different than the rating, else return. Alright, the next step should be creating that entry model. So let to be updated entry is going to be journal entry. The post date, we're going to keep that initial date. For the content, we're going to take the journal content that the user modifies or deletes, and the same for rating. So journal content, and for well-being rating, the rating. Now, the only thing that is left for us to do is to call that repository function. So do catch debug print error updating journal entry, and just specify that error. Journal entries repository.update or entry.id because we need to know the ID we're looking for in our database, and we should update it with to be updated entry. And after an update, same as for save, we need to retrieve them all again. So let's check that out. In our home view, let's try to modify the second one. Let's modify only the day rating, so from 1 to 5, and hit dismiss, and it is updated. Let's also modify the text. So text for update, hit dismiss, you can see that trigger, and our update function works properly. But I don't know if you have noticed, but I did. If we start from fresh, so go to this view and then go back. Let's say we want to update this, trigger an update, but let's not do anything, just dismiss it. And then let's say we just want to add a new journal entry. We can see that our data is populated with the cell that we just wanted to update, and that is a no-no. So let's see what we can do about that. In our home view model, after an update, we should clear the journal content. The current selected journal entry is going to be nil, and the rating should be put to default again, and that's 3. Same as for save, but we need a new step for the current selected journal entry. Now if we check it out again, trigger an update, dismiss it, trigger an add, and we still have this issue. And I think I know where the problem is. If we go to our home view model, we have these conditions here with the return. So basically every time an update is triggered and we do nothing to that journal content, is going to go on this return. And when it goes to this return, these 3 lines of code are not called at all. So we could use a defer here. So a defer is something like defer and then curly brackets and put this code in here. And what that does for us is that every time this scope is terminated, it's gonna go through this block of code. But as far as I noted so far, when we use asynchronous code, this defer is not going exactly as planned. If we wouldn't have an asynchronous code here, then this solution would be quite good. But in order to make sure that everything works fine, let's just copy this code, put it in a private function, call it defaulting values, and paste them here. Now, each time we are going on a return, we should call that function before we return, and same at the end. If you know a better solution for this case, feel free to leave a comment down below. I would be really glad to learn something new, but this is the safest option I've seen when dealing with try await. So let's test again. Home view, trigger an update, do nothing, trigger a create, and we can see that these values are back to their default form again. Well, because we run the latest Xcode and with the latest Swift version, something happens. We have a purple warning here, so you can see it if we just run the app on an actual simulator, so not just view it on the preview. And the first purple warning is right here. This warning says the following: publishing changes from background threads is not allowed. Make sure to publish values from the main thread. Same if we want to trigger an update, dismiss it, we get other errors right here. So why this happens? This is because when you're using asynchronous code like try await and async right here, when this code is executed, it's pushed on a random thread. But after we get the data that we need, or we created or we retrieve, we need to update the UI. And I don't know if you know or not, but when updating the UI, you always need to be on the main thread. So this is really important and crucial for an application. We have to make sure that every update we do to these published values like journal content, rating, or journal entries, we make those changes on the main thread because these values are used in our view. So let's start with these defaulting values. Let's make it async first of all, and then let's use something like await MainActor.run, and then let's just copy this code and put it here. Now it complains because it needs an await here, and also here. And what this does is it ensures that this code is going to run on the main thread. Same here, await MainActor.run, place this code here, and same for updating the journal entries. So let's run our app again on an actual simulator this time, because otherwise we can't catch those warnings. Let's try to dismiss an update. No warning here. Let's try to create a new one. No warning here. And no warning for the retrieve in general. So there you have it. We did a great job making sure that we go back to our main thread once we need to update the UI. Now let's continue with the delete function. It should be really short. So function delete journal entry of type journal entry. It's gonna be async try await journal entry repository.delete for journal entry.id, and then await retrieve all journal entries. Of course, we can do a do catch to make sure that we catch any error. Copy this catch, error, deleting journal entry, and put this code right inside the do block. Remove the question mark. We just need a way to trigger this delete journal entry. So let's go back to our home view. Let's find our journal cell view, which is right here. And the way we're gonna do our delete is gonna be using a context menu. Like when the user holds a little bit longer on that cell, a drop-down menu is gonna appear with the delete option inside it. So let's add a new modifier here, context menu, curly brackets. Let's use a button. And for the label, we're gonna have label, delete, and the system image of trash. So if we hold a bit longer, we can see that we have a delete right here. That's pretty great. Nothing happened so far. We just need to add a task here because it's gonna be an asynchronous code. So self.show toolbar loading spinner. We need to let the user know that something might take a bit of time, and then await view model dot delete journal entry for that specific entry, and then make this loading spinner false. Let's test it out. So let's try to delete the first one, delete, and it works good, except that we used the wrong variable here. We need to show the toolbar loading spinner, not the center one. Let's try again, hold a bit longer, delete. We can see that we triggered that toolbar loading spinner and everything works just fine. And there we have it. We have successfully implemented all the CRUD operations, complete with loading spinners, for better user feedback. We've ensured data is cleared and reset to default values when no action is taken by the user. Plus, We made sure to switch back to the main thread before updating the UI, resolving any obvious bugs and making the app more robust. And I think what's left now is to ensure we show a clear error message to the user when something goes wrong. As right now, we're only printing the error, and the user has no way of knowing if an issue occurred or not. Thank you so much for following along. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment if you have any questions or suggestions for improvements. But for now, happy scribbling.